The day Earth changed forever started like any other. Tom Miller sat at his desk at the Global Space Defense Center, monitoring deep space signals as he had done for the past 15 years. The coffee in his mug had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed. His eyes were fixed on an unusual pattern appearing on his screen. "Sir, you need to see this," Tom called out to his supervisor, Jack Wilson. The pattern wasn't random space noise, it was a clear, structured message. Within hours, the entire world knew, humanity wasn't alone. The aliens called themselves the Visitors, and they came with promises of peace and technological advancement. Their massive ships appeared in the skies above every major city, sleek and beautiful, unlike anything humans had ever built. The Visitors' ambassador, who took the Earth name James, spoke perfect English and charmed world leaders with tales of galactic wonders. They offered to help humanity join the wider galaxy community, sharing medical cures, clean energy technology, and faster-than-light travel capabilities. "We only ask for your trust and partnership," James said in his first worldwide broadcast. His perfect smile and kind eyes won over billions. The few who voiced doubts were dismissed as paranoid conspiracy theorists. Tom, however, couldn't shake his unease. Something about the signal patterns he'd first detected didn't match the Visitors' explanation of their arrival. Working late one night, he discovered a hidden layer in the transmission, encrypted commands in an unknown language. He took his findings to Lisa Brown, his longtime friend and the center's chief of cybersecurity. She spent days analyzing the data, her face growing grimmer with each passing hour. "Tom, these aren't random commands," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're targeting coordinates. Military bases, power plants, communication centers, every critical infrastructure point on Earth." Before they could warn anyone, the Visitors made their true intentions known. On a sunny Tuesday morning, exactly 3 months after first contact, their ships opened fire. The gifts they'd given humanity turned out to be Trojan horses, filled with viruses that shut down Earth's defense systems. Cities fell within hours. The Visitors' weapons easily overwhelmed Earth's military forces. World leaders who had so eagerly welcomed the aliens were the first to be eliminated. But in their arrogance, the Visitors made a crucial mistake. They assumed humanity would simply surrender, broken and defeated. They didn't understand the human spirit. They didn't realize that humans, when pushed to the edge, would not go quietly into extinction. Tom and Lisa managed to escape the chaos with critical data about the Visitors' systems. As they drove through the burning ruins of their city, Lisa turned to Tom with fierce determination in her eyes. "They think they've won," she said, clutching a hard drive containing everything they'd learned about the alien technology. "But they don't know humans very well, do they?" In an underground bunker, surrounded by other survivors, they began planning humanity's response. The Visitors had betrayed Earth's trust, but they would soon learn a harsh lesson: never underestimate a species that had survived ice ages, plagues, and its own destructive tendencies. The real war was just beginning, and humanity wasn't planning to fight fair. They had nothing left to lose, and everything to avenge. 6 months after the invasion, Earth's surface had become almost unrecognizable. The Visitors' massive ships now served as floating cities, casting permanent shadows over the ruins below. They had transformed major cities into processing centers, extracting Earth's resources with ruthless efficiency. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, however, humanity was far from defeated. The underground military bunker, known as Haven, had become the heart of the resistance. Tom and Lisa worked tirelessly with a team of survivors, analyzing the data they'd salvaged from the Space Defense Center. "Look at this," Lisa said one day, pointing to her screen. She'd been studying the viruses the Visitors had used to disable Earth's systems. "Their code has a pattern. It's complex, but it's not unbreakable." Tom leaned over her shoulder, his eyes widening as he understood. They never bothered to change their basic encryption. They thought we were too primitive to crack it. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mark Roberts, a former video game developer who'd escaped the Denver Processing Center, noticed something familiar about the visitors' control systems. It's like their entire network runs on a basic input-output loop, Mark explained to the Haven Council. Similar to how NPCs in games follow preset patterns. They're advanced, but they're rigid. They don't adapt well to chaos. Colonel Helen Parker, the highest-ranking military officer in Haven, saw the potential immediately. If we can't match their strength, we'll use their rigid thinking against them. Classic guerrilla warfare, but with a technological twist. The plan they developed was audacious. Using the visitors' own communication frequencies, they would inject random commands into their network. Not enough to be immediately noticed, but enough to create small malfunctions and confusion. Like giving a computer 1,000 tiny paper cuts, Mark said with a grim smile. Eventually, it bleeds out. They called it Operation Chaos. Teams of survivors around the world would coordinate their attacks, each targeting different systems at random intervals. The visitors' strict hierarchical command structure meant they had to verify every anomaly with their superiors, creating delays and confusion. The first test came when Lisa's team hacked into a processing center's environmental controls. They made temperatures fluctuate randomly, just enough to disrupt the visitors' sensitive equipment. The aliens spent days trying to find the cause, following their protocols exactly as predicted. They're so focused on finding the source, they don't see the bigger picture, Tom observed. They can't imagine that primitive humans could be causing this. But the real victory came when they discovered something in the visitors' medical data. The aliens had extensively studied human biology, looking for weaknesses to exploit. In doing so, they'd inadvertently revealed their own vulnerabilities. Their nervous system is highly sensitive to certain frequencies, Lisa explained to the council. Frequencies we can generate with modified human technology. Colonel Parker's eyes gleamed with possibility. So we can hurt them without matching their weapons? Better, Lisa replied. We can make them hurt themselves. Their automated defense systems operate on these same frequencies. If we can disrupt them just right. The pieces of humanity's revenge were falling into place. The visitors had assumed that defeating Earth's military meant defeating humanity. They hadn't counted on human ingenuity, adaptability, and most importantly, humanity's experience with fighting dirty. In Haven's main hall, Colonel Parker addressed the growing resistance. They came here expecting to find primitive beings they could easily conquer. Instead, they're about to learn why humans have survived every catastrophe we've faced. We don't just endure, we come back stronger. The room erupted in determined cheers. Phase 1 of Operation Chaos would begin at dawn. The visitors were about to discover that their greatest mistake wasn't just betraying humanity, it was underestimating humanity's capacity for revenge. Operation Chaos began on a moonless night. In Haven's command center, Lisa's fingers flew across her keyboard, coordinating with resistance cells worldwide. Tom stood behind her, monitoring the visitors' communication channels. Colonel Parker paced the room, her boots echoing against the concrete floor. All teams report ready, Lisa announced. Australia, Europe, Asia, Africa, everyone's in position. Mark Roberts made final adjustments to their signal disruptor, a device cobbled together from salvaged alien tech and human ingenuity. Remember, we only get one shot at surprising them. After this, they'll know we're capable of fighting back. Colonel Parker nodded grimly. That's exactly what we want. Begin transmission. The first phase targeted the visitors' floating cities. Thousands of tiny disruptions hit their systems simultaneously, environmental controls went haywire, doors opened and closed randomly, artificial gravity fluctuated. The aliens' rigid protocols forced them to investigate each malfunction individually, creating a cascade of confusion. They're responding exactly as predicted, Tom reported, listening to their frantic communications. Their command structure is falling into complete disarray. But the real chaos began when Mark activated his special program. He'd discovered that the visitors' ships used an automated defense system that targeted any unauthorized energy signatures. By broadcasting specific frequencies, they could trick these systems into detecting false threats. The results exceeded their wildest expectations. Defense turrets on the alien ships suddenly activated, firing at non-existent targets. Some ships' shields activated randomly, cutting off communication with their command centers. The visitors' perfect order descended into pandemonium. "Look at this!" Lisa exclaimed, pointing to her monitor. "Their ships over Tokyo are actually firing at each other." The Resistance watched in amazement as the aliens' own weapons turned against them. The visitors, programmed to follow strict protocols, couldn't adapt fast enough to the escalating chaos. Their attempts to restore order only made things worse. But the true masterstroke came from an unexpected source. Dan Cooper, a former IT technician who'd been quietly working on his own project, approached Colonel Parker with a discovery. "The visitors store their memories in a shared network," he explained. "It's how they maintain their group consciousness. But it's also their weakness." Dan had developed a virus that could infiltrate this network, not to destroy it, but to plant seeds of doubt. False memories of human victories, phantom sensations of pain, growing uncertainty about their mission, all spreading through their collective consciousness like a cancer. "Psychological warfare," Colonel Parker said with appreciation. "Not just attacking their bodies, but their minds." The effects became apparent within hours. Reports came in of visitors acting erratically, some even abandoning their posts. Their perfect coordination began to break down as doubt crept into their shared consciousness. In their arrogance, the aliens had never considered that humans might be capable of such sophisticated attacks. They had expected resistance, but physical resistance, bombs, bullets, and conventional warfare. They weren't prepared for an enemy that could turn their own technology and psychology against them. As dawn broke over Haven, the Resistance celebrated their first major victory. But Tom noticed Lisa still working intently at her station. "We've hit them hard," he said. "Maybe you should rest." She shook her head, her eyes never leaving the screen. "This was just the beginning. Look at this data we've collected from their response patterns. Every time they react, they reveal more about how their systems work. More importantly, they're showing us how their minds work." Colonel Parker joined them, studying the incoming reports. "They thought they were studying us, learning our weaknesses. They never realized we were studying them right back. The next phase would be even bolder." The Resistance had proven that humanity could hurt their betrayers. Now it was time to show the visitors why Earth's history was filled with tales of vengeance, and why humans were its greatest storytellers. In the depths of Haven, Dan worked on expanding his virus, while Mark refined their signal disruptors. The visitors had awakened humanity's darkest desire, revenge. And this was only the beginning of their nightmare. The visitors' response to Operation Chaos came swift and brutal. Their ships unleashed devastating attacks on suspected Resistance locations, leveling entire city blocks. But they found only empty buildings. The Resistance was always 3 steps ahead, thanks to their understanding of the aliens' predictable tactics. In Haven's medical bay, Dr. Anna Peters made a breakthrough that would change the course of the war. Studying tissue samples from a fallen visitor, she discovered something extraordinary about their neural structure. "Their brains are like biological quantum computers," she explained to the Haven Council. "It's what gives them their shared consciousness. But it also means they're susceptible to quantum interference." Lisa and Dan immediately grasped the implications. "If we can disrupt their quantum neural network," Lisa began. "We can shatter their group mind," Dan finished. "Not just plant false memories, but break their entire collective consciousness." The plan they developed was ruthless, but so had been the visitors' betrayal. Using modified versions of the aliens' own medical scanners, they could broadcast targeted quantum frequencies that would overwhelm the visitors' neural networks. Tom, monitoring the aliens' communications, reported increasing chaos in their ranks. Their shared consciousness is already fragmenting. Some are beginning to question their leaders, their mission, even their own memories. The Resistance's next strike targeted the visitors' command structure directly. Mark's refined disruptors, combined with Dan's enhanced psychological warfare program, created a devastating 1-2 punch. The aliens' ships began receiving contradictory orders, their crews trapped between their programming and their disintegrating group mind. Colonel Parker watched the feeds with grim satisfaction. They're experiencing something they've never faced before, individuality. And they're terrified of it. The visitors' response revealed their growing desperation. Their perfect formation began to break down as different factions emerged, each interpreting their mission differently. Some ships even turned on each other, their crews driven by newly awakened individual fears and doubts. But the most satisfying moment came when Lisa intercepted a transmission from the visitors' high command. The message was clear: Earth was no longer considered an easy conquest. Instead, humans were now classified as a Class 1 threat, a designation reserved for the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They're calling us mind breakers. Tom translated, a hint of pride in his voice. They've never encountered a species that could fracture their collective consciousness before. Dr. Peters' team continued refining their quantum interference techniques, while Dan worked to exploit the growing cracks in the aliens' shared consciousness. The visitors had assumed their collective mind was their greatest strength. Now it was becoming their greatest weakness. In their floating cities, the aliens began experiencing something entirely new: dreams. Not the shared visions of their collective, but individual nightmares. Dreams of human vengeance, of their perfect order crumbling, of being cut off from the hive mind that had defined their existence. We're not just defeating them, Lisa observed, watching the chaos unfold. We're changing them at their core. Making them experience the fear and isolation they inflicted on us. The Resistance's victory was taking a form no one had expected. Instead of merely driving the visitors from Earth, they were forcing them to confront the very concept of individuality, something their species had evolved away from eons ago. In Haven's command center, Colonel Parker reviewed reports of visitor ships fleeing Earth's orbit. But she knew better than to celebrate too early. They'll be back, she warned. But next time, they won't be facing a primitive species they can easily betray. They'll be facing humanity at its most dangerous, humanity with a score to settle. The war was far from over, but the balance had shifted. The visitors were learning a harsh lesson about human nature: we don't just seek revenge, we redefine it. And in their desperate attempt to understand what was happening to them, they were only making themselves more vulnerable to humanity's next strike. 3 weeks after the quantum attacks began, the visitors faced an unprecedented crisis. Their once unified consciousness had splintered into countless individual minds, each experiencing something they'd never known before: personal fear, doubt, and confusion. In Haven, Lisa and Dan monitored the deterioration of the alien collective. It's like watching a supercomputer break down into its individual processors, Dan explained. Each one suddenly having to think for itself. The effects were more devastating than anyone had anticipated. Some visitors, overwhelmed by their newfound individuality, simply shut down. Others, driven by their first taste of personal ambition, turned against their former commanders. The rigid hierarchy that had made them so powerful was now tearing them apart. Tom intercepted a particularly revealing transmission from one of their ships. "Listen to this," he called out to the team. The message wasn't the usual precise, emotionless alien communication. Instead, it was filled with confusion and something new: fear. "Help, the silence, can't hear the others, am I alone?" Dr. Peters studied the psychological impact of their attacks. "We're not just breaking their communication," she reported. "We're forcing them to evolve. Their brains are rapidly developing individual consciousness to compensate for the loss of their collective mind." The Resistance's next phase exploited this chaos. Mark developed a program that could target individual visitors, isolating them completely from any remaining collective connections. The aliens' worst nightmare was being alone in their own minds, and humanity was turning this fear into a weapon. Colonel Parker authorized the deployment of what they called the Loneliness Protocol. Using the visitors' own communication networks, they broadcast quantum signals that created permanent barriers between individual alien minds. "It's elegant in its cruelty," Lisa observed. "We're not killing them. We're making them experience what they did to us, the terror of being betrayed and alone." The effects rippled through the visitor fleet. Ships began breaking formation, their crews no longer able to maintain the perfect coordination that had made them unstoppable. Some vessels attempted to flee Earth's solar system, while others turned their weapons on their own kind. But the most significant development came from an unexpected source. A group of visitors, led by one who called himself First Individual, made contact with Haven. They were different from their brethren, they had embraced their newfound individuality. "We understand now," First Individual's message stated. "The strength we thought came from our unity, it was actually our greatest weakness. You humans, in your beautiful chaos, showed us truth." The revelation spread through the remaining visitor forces like a virus. More and more of them began to question their original mission. The very concept of conquest seemed meaningless to beings now grappling with individual consciousness. Dr. Peters monitored their neural patterns with fascination. Their brains are actually rewiring themselves. They're developing the capacity for individual emotion, personal choice, even empathy. But not all visitors embraced this change. A significant faction, led by their highest command, fought desperately against the transformation. They saw individuality as a disease that needed to be purged, even if it meant destroying their own kind. "They're preparing for something big," Tom warned, studying their communication patterns. "The ones still connected to the collective, they're gathering their forces." Colonel Parker understood immediately. "They're not just fighting us anymore. They're fighting to prevent their own evolution." In Haven's command center, the Resistance leaders gathered to plan their response. The visitors' internal conflict presented both an opportunity and a danger. The divided aliens were weaker, but those clinging to their collective consciousness had become more desperate and unpredictable. Lisa looked at the data streaming across her screens, showing the chaos spreading through the alien fleet. "We didn't just get revenge," she said quietly. "We changed them forever. The question is, what will they become?" The answer would come sooner than anyone expected, and it would determine not just the fate of Earth, but the future of both species. The warning came at midnight. First Individual's transmission cut through Haven's secure channels. "They're coming. The collective has made its decision. Earth must be destroyed to prevent the spread of individuality." Tom's monitors confirmed the threat. Hundreds of visitor ships were emerging from hyperspace, forming a battle line around Earth. These weren't the confused, fractured forces they'd been fighting. These were the elite, those who had managed to maintain their collective consciousness through sheer force of will. "They've modified their neural networks," Dr. Peters reported, studying the new data. "They've found a way to resist our quantum interference. But the cost?" She paused, looking troubled. "They've had to surrender even more of their individual identity. They're barely sentient anymore, just extensions of their central command." Colonel Parker called an emergency meeting of the Resistance leadership. Representatives from every major bunker joined via secure channels. The situation was dire. The remaining collective forces had gathered enough firepower to glass the planet's surface. "They see us as an infection," Lisa explained, analyzing their communications. Not just an enemy to be conquered, but a threat to their entire way of life. The very concept of individuality terrifies them so much, they're willing to destroy themselves to stop it. But humanity wasn't without allies. First Individuals Group, now calling themselves the Awakened, had grown significantly. Their ships took position around Earth, forming a protective barrier against their former brethren. "We've seen the truth through human eyes," First Individual declared. "We will not allow them to extinguish this gift of consciousness, even if we must fight our own kind." Mark had been working non-stop on upgrading their quantum weapons. The collective forces may be resistant to our previous attacks, but their enhanced neural linking makes them vulnerable in a new way. If we can breach their defenses even for a moment, their entire network could collapse, Dan finished, understanding the implications. But we'd need to get close enough to their command ship to transmit the signal directly. That's when Tom made a startling discovery. Hidden in the original contact signals he detected all those months ago was a blueprint, the complete technical specifications of the visitors' ships, including their command vessels. "They never deleted it," Tom said, excitement in his voice. "They were so confident in their superiority, they didn't bother to purge their early transmissions. We have their weakness, the exact frequency their ships operate on." The plan that emerged was audacious. The Awakened would engage the collective fleet, creating a diversion. Meanwhile, a small team would approach the command ship under cover of the battle, using the visitors' own stealth technology against them. "One shot," Colonel Parker said, studying the plan. "One chance to end this war." Dr. Peters raised a concern. "The level of quantum disruption needed, it won't just break their collective consciousness. It could permanently damage their ability to form any kind of mental connection. We'd be forcing an entire civilization to change its very nature." "They made their choice when they decided to destroy Earth," Lisa replied firmly. "Everything that happens now is on them." As the resistance prepared for battle, the sky above Earth became a scene of terrible beauty. The collective fleet's ships glowed with an ominous red energy, while the awakened vessels pulsed with a softer, almost human-like blue. Tom looked up from his station, watching the forces gather. "Ironic, isn't it? They came here to conquer what they saw as a primitive species. Instead, we've split their civilization in half and forced them to fight a civil war." Colonel Parker gathered her strike team. The mission would be dangerous, possibly suicidal. But every volunteer knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or weapons, but our ability to change, adapt, and grow stronger through adversity. As the first shots were fired in orbit, Lisa sent one final message to the collective forces: "You should have learned from Earth's history. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the biggest weapons. It's the one you've given a reason to seek revenge."